The Qatar World Cup is finally here with all its thrills and controversies. The list of worries have only mounted, with allegations of deep-rooted corruption during the initial bidding process, followed by the harrowing conditions of workers involved in the building of the tournament infrastructure, and the most recent bone of contention has been a ban on all alcoholic beverages in and around the venues, which has caused quite the stir across the world for a sport that is usually enjoyed with a chilled beer in one hand. But this World Cup is neither new nor unique among FIFA's long history of organizing this prestigious tournament. So let's take a look at some past World Cups, the controversies and the tragedies that were involved, and end by analyzing why Qatar seems to be garnering so much more attention while the others seemingly did not. We start by winding the clock all the way back to 1938 when Italy were attempting to defend their World Cup crown. The then fascist leader of Italy, a certain Benito Mussolini, ordered the Italian players to walk onto their field for their quarterfinal against France dressed in all black, the colors of the Maglia Nera, a symbol of Italy's fascist paramilitary, instead of their alternate white kit. Not only that, the players also performed the fascist salute before kickoff and eventually beat France, going on to win the tournament. They held the crown of world champions till the next World Cup 12 years later in 1950. On to South America in 1973, where Chile were set to host the Soviet Union for the second leg of their qualifiers for the World Cup held in 1974. The first leg was a 0-0 draw in Moscow. The second leg was set to take place at the Estadio Nacional de Chile in Santiago on November 21 in 1973. 2 months prior to kickoff, however, Chile was subject to a military coup, and people deemed undesirable by the new regime were imprisoned and finally executed at the very stadium where the second leg between the Soviet Union and Chile was to be held. The Soviet requested FIFA to change the venue to a neutral location. However, an agreement could not be reached. The Soviet team did not take to the field in light of these circumstances. Surprisingly, the match was still organized per schedule by FIFA. The match actually took place with only one team taking the field. The Chileans scored a goal in an empty opposition net, following which the referee blew the whistle on a 1-0 victory for Chile as they qualified for the 1974 World Cup. Chile were eliminated in the first round. Argentina, who were set to host the 1978 World Cup, underwent their own military coup of its democratic government in 1976. Even so, the tournament was set to go ahead per schedule. In 1977, a reported 5,618 individuals were reported to have disappeared. These individuals were held prisoners in a concentration camp believed to be not too far from River Plate's Monumental Stadium in the country's capital of Buenos Aires, where the finals were held. Johan Cruyff famously did not participate in the World Cup, even though the Dutch national team did, and went on to meet the host nation in the finals. The tournament was rife with allegations of corrupt officials favoring decisions for Argentina, with suggestions of match fixing coming to a height during the penultimate round of fixtures. Argentina needed to beat Peru by a 4-goal margin in order to qualify for the finals. They faced a Peruvian side that had only conceded 6 goals in their last 5 matches and went on to beat them 6-0 in order to meet the Dutch in the finals. The final itself was a messy affair, with the Dutch players driven to the stadium through a longer, winding route and made to wait on the pitch in front of 70,000 loud and hostile Argentina supporters for as long as 10 minutes before the host nation walked on. These factors no doubt played a huge part in the Dutch nation's eventual 3-1 defeat as Argentina went on to win their first World Cup, while the Dutch still await their moment of glory. Coming on to 1982, where the Algerian national team made their World Cup debut and turned some heads. Their progress was cut short, however, due to a game that has since gone down in history as the Disgrace of Gijon. West Germany and Austria met for the last game of the group stages. Both sides knew that a 1-0 win to the West Germans would mean that both teams would qualify for the next round, while Algeria would end up being eliminated. The Germans scored within the first 10 minutes of the game, and the teams then proceeded to kick the ball about for the remainder of the 90 for the game to end 1-0. A true slap in the face of sportsmanship which went unpunished. There are of course more such controversies even in the 21st century, with Germany's winning bid for the 2000 World Cup famously coming under corruption charges, not to mention Russia's controversial hosting of the 2018 World Cup given the political atmosphere of the country. It is also worth pointing out how poorer nations have been left in financial ruin, famously with Brazil leaving many stadiums abandoned and eventually having to turn them into bus lots, with all the money spent having resulted in no real gains for the nation. Qatar is also set to spend $200 billion as hosts, with projected earnings well below $2 billion. So why does it seem like Qatar is the only World Cup that seems to be garnering so much attention? Well, the simple answer is recency bias. We are living in the here and now. With how easy it is for information to be passed around and the ease with which everyone can voice their opinions, it is no surprise that drawing attention and magnifying the injustices of Qatar is a vastly more achievable feat. There is also the larger worldview and the rise of a global and more liberal population that yearns for a call to action against injustice like never before. The bravery of some of the national players to voice their concerns and their worries about the tournament go a long way as well. The hope is that we are soon able to actively influence these decisions and steer the conversations to a more favorable and equitable solution. The aim of any sport should always be to serve humanity as a collective and not just the few fortunate, while millions others suffer.